Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the recap and review of NCIS Season 17, Episode 3, Going Mobile. So we start out with a delivery truck arriving on the Navy Yard, and the driver's kind of maybe flirting a little bit with the woman inspecting the truck. And then they start to smell something, and it might be romance in the air, or it could be the dead body rotting underneath the truck. The team walks into the squad room and is met by Sloan, wearing quite possibly the sickest pantsuit I've ever seen. Sloan senses a weird vibe happening in the squad room, which is exactly the vibe that Vance feared. Vance apparently feared that Ziva, I don't know if you remember her, might have disrupted the team chemistry, so Vance wanted Sloan to go in and speak with them about it, but no one wants to talk. At this point, they've brought the body back to NCIS and they figure out that the victim is named Eli, and the truck that he was found under was carrying a mobile home that belonged to him and his brother Pete. They pull out all sorts of shrapnel and they figure out that the culprit is a tiny man named Felix, who just also happens to be a gnome. It's that moment that we're also informed that Kasie and Gibbs both have a fear of leprechauns. That's exciting. McGee then stops by Sloan's office, and yes, he maybe wishes Ziva would have said goodbye, but he's not bitter about it or anything. The main reason that he came to talk to Sloan was because he's worried about Bishop, because she's been acting differently since she met Ziva. They kind of theorize that Bishop might be afraid of becoming Ziva, but not nearly as afraid as McGee is of Bishop overhearing them. So they head over to the trailer park and figure out that not only did the brothers own that home, they own the entire lot. An older neighbor named Esther walks up and she overhears them talking about a potential killer. She's like, killer? Does that mean he's been killed? That usually is what is implied. It turns out that all the tenants are angry because the brothers nearly doubled their rent and they might have an angry mob on their hands. Meanwhile, Sloan confronts Bishop about the whole Ziva thing, and Bishop says yes, it's a lot and she's still processing, which, hi, same. But her and Ziva are cool. Bishop says who isn't cool with Ziva is Torres because Ziva beat him in a fight. She also says that Torres hasn't looked her in the eye since. I wonder what that could be about. Gibbs then calls to talk to Bishop and Sloan leans over. She's like, you can also talk to me. Is this flirting? They then go up to meet with Pete, who says that someone left him a note saying that he's next. Gibbs then goes to meet Esther in her home and steals a pencil. While she's painting, she talks to him about the fact that most people living there are on a fixed income and they could all easily be out on the streets. At NCIS, Torres is walking around and runs into, you guessed it, Sloan. Sloan has a very Slender Man energy this episode, by the way. Like, if you think she's not behind you, I have some news. They head into the elevator to talk, and Torres assures Sloan that he let Ziva win. He also says that Ziva distracted him with a few choice words, but won't reveal what they are. He then redirects the conversation from him and Bishop to Sloan and Gibbs. It's like Noah's Ark here. Torres says that everyone knows that her and Gibbs have a thing, and they bring up last Christmas. I can't imagine what they noticed last Christmas. Oh, and Pete's car blew up, by the way. He got out just in time though, he's fine. The next day, Kasie goes to Gibbs and says that Esther's pencil wasn't the one used to write the note, so she's in the clear. Because as we all know, everyone only owns one pencil. Sloan pops in to see if she can help with anything, but I'm surprised she can see anything at all through those hearts in her eyes. The team is all like shading each other and withholding vital information, and Gibbs is like, can we not do this right now? They bring Felix, the gnome's owner, into interrogation. Throughout this entire scene, Bishop and Torres have like a very noticeable, uncomfortable energy happening. The gnome owner says that he's not the killer and he's more of a knife guy anyway, which is great because we're gonna need a knife to cut through this tension. He then has some sort of an asthma attack, and between that and the fact that his garden hasn't been growing, something seems suspicious. Gibbs then goes to talk to Sloan about the elephant in the room, partly referring to the ink blot painting on the wall and partly referring to but then she kind of chickens out and switches gears and gets Gibbs to finally talk about Ziva. Gibbs is really at a loss of what to do because he regrets not looking for her before. Is he supposed to look for her now? Like, what does she want from him? Sloan, who is speaking from experience, says that he's done all he can do and now he needs to let his daughter go. In her lab, Kasie figures out that their suspicions were correct when the soil tests positive for carcinogens. They put this together with the fact that a nearby chemical warehouse recently had a fire, so Ducky and Gibbs go over to talk to the vice president to get to the bottom of it. The vice president eventually admits that yes, he did contract the brothers to buy the land, but he did give them incentive packages packages to offer the tenants to help them move out. It turns out, however, that the tenants never got these incentive packages. They bring Pete into interrogation and he admits that yes, him and Eli were planning on keeping the incentive money for themselves and then hiking up the rent to force the tenants out. But then Eli got cold feet and they got into an argument and there was pushing and shoving and he eventually went headfirst into a gnome. The reason Pete didn't call 911 is because he just lost his brother. He didn't want to lose the money too. He also was the one who blew up his car in order to try and drive suspicion away from himself. Gibbs goes back to Esther and tells her that her and the other tenants have a big settlement waiting for them. And then they hug and it's very sweet. Somebody better tell Sloane to watch out because Esther is coming for her man. In the squad room, McGee and Torres and Bishop all apologize to each other. They don't apologize to Sloane, by the way, which is weird because they were rude to her all day, but I digress. Sloane then would like to take a moment to assure everyone that her and Gibbs are not having a thing. They play dumb for a minute until she walks away and then they confirm amongst each other that yes, they do very much think they're having a thing. Again, I can't possibly imagine why. Sloane heads back to her office and sees that Gibbs has left her a literal elephant in the room with a note that says Merry Christmas. And then she falls back smiling into her chair, and that is going mobile. I think the first episode coming out of a really big arc is always very difficult to navigate, especially when it's with the premiere, because with the finale you have like some time to like digest and start anew. But with the premiere, it's like you got 6 days, my dude, I'm sorry. And to this episode's credit, I do think it was much better than the first episode after Ziva's original farewell arc, where it was just Gibbs being like, what's a Twitter? I did not love everything about this episode, but I do like that there was an opportunity to talk about, you know, that whole thing that just happened. I get that all the team members were handling it in different ways, but I really liked how they handled it with Gibbs. And I kind of wish that all the talks had more elements of his talk with Sloane. It is beautiful to me how many times they refer to Ziva being Gibbs' daughter. Like, I'm waiting for someone to whip out the adoption papers. I also thought they painted Ziva's appearance and then disappearance in a really interesting light. You know, they certainly showcase some of the more negative aspects of it, like the team fighting and the team chemistry being a little bit out of whack. And on one hand, I think that's a really interesting choice because she's gonna come back, as we know, and then they're gonna be like, ooh, we just got over this the first time. But I also do think it presents an opportunity for her to come back and maybe fix things a little, give McGee that goodbye, give like a pep talk to Bishop, smack Torres in the face maybe. I also thought it was really interesting that they went with the angle of Bishop maybe being a little bit scared of turning into Ziva and like having all these horrible things happen to her that Ziva went through. And on one hand I get it because yes, she's sitting at this desk where all the women before her have had these like really tragic, terrible things happen to them. But on the other hand, I think Ziva had like a lot more than the desk working against her. And again, I think that was just more of their concern. We don't know if Bishop really had that concern herself. And so again, I'm just really, really excited to explore more of that Ziva-Bishop relationship further down the road. I really enjoyed Sloane and Gibbs this episode. I just enjoy their relationship a lot. And I like the way that they act when they're around each other. Like, I like that Gibbs is more vulnerable, and I like how kindly and honestly and openly Sloane talks to him back. Like, I just really enjoy them together and their vibe. And I went back and watched those Christmas scenes and my God, it's touching. Speaking of Christmas, by the way, what happened? I mean, clearly they had a moment. I just don't know what that moment was. And there was also that moment in the finale where they like held hands in the hospital. I think they know there is like a thing happening, and I'm just really excited for them to talk about that. Torres and Bishop, on the other hand, I think just have some things to work through. Their tension is just building and building and building, and I wonder if in one of these upcoming episodes it's just gonna explode. I think the two of them need to have a conversation, and if an explosion is what causes that, so be it. Speaking of moving forward, I think next episode has a storyline talking about homeless veterans, and there is that little subplot about the consequences of McGee and Torres and Bishop lying to Vance where they have to clean up the evidence garage. Maybe it'll be like a Breakfast Club situation where they're all like locked in this building together and they start to like divulge their deep dark secrets. You know, they're all locked in this room and maybe their feelings about Ziva come up a little bit more, or their feelings about each other. Bishop and Torres are like making out and McGee's like, I thought I was done with this. I think this episode introduced some, you know, rather big things in terms of relationships between characters, so I'm really excited to see how we continue with that. So I believe that's all I have to say about Going Mobile. Let me know your guys' thoughts, your thoughts on how they handled the Ziva of it all, the Slibs, what is their name? Alec! Alec, that's what the kids call it. Like I said, I have things that I liked about the episode, some things I wish were handled differently, and some things I'm very curious to see how they handle moving forward. As much as I love to see Torres remind us all 47 times that he let Ziva win, I think I would have maybe liked to delve a little bit deeper into him and Bishop, and maybe talking about that lack of goodbye between Ziva and McGee. I think those would have been really interesting conversations. I do think some of those doors were like intentionally left open so that Ziva can walk back through them in a few episodes. Knowing that she comes back, I'm really interested to see how they continue weaving that element throughout the season. I believe that's all I have to say for now, and I will see you guys for the recap and review of Someone Else's Shoes. It looks like everyone's up to no good.